Well, I've always been in tune with other people's emotions.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm now, having done the work, more in tune with my own.
Welcome to the Awaken the Matriarch podcast, a show devoted to inspiring women to reclaim their power, share their gifts, and live in alignment with their true nature. I'm your host, Melissa Collerette, transformational coach, author, and proud mama. And I am so excited for today's episode. We have an incredible guest with us today, one of my clients, and just this incredible woman. I kid you not, this woman is such a ray of light, and it is such a joy to be orbiting around her son. Erin White is a speech language pathologist and founder of the Cognosco Group, and I have had the privilege and honor of being her coach for the last several years and witnessing not only her transformation, but who she is in the world and who she continues to evolve into is honestly such a joy. Erin, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited for this conversation. And I love that, it's the morning for you in Australia. I am here, it's the evening in Quebec. And talk about making things work. We have been working together for several years now from opposite ends of the globe. And I'm so lucky that you have said yes to having this conversation with me because just being in your space, like I always feel so excited coming into our conversations. And I'm excited for this one because it's like a different vibe than the ones we typically have. And just you being you is a gift to the world. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm getting get emotional. That's very sweet of you. It was such a nice introduction. And you're right, like we're on different sides of the world. It's the morning here, evening for you. But it always feels like we're together in the same place, even though we're clearly not. It's very easy to be with you. And I just love our time together. So I'm so happy to be here.
Isn't that like, I find that so fascinating as much as like, obviously when we had coffee together in person a couple of years ago, so amazing. And I'm so grateful that the internet was created so that we could work together and like make boundaries like disappear, And I also have a tie to Australia, having studied there. So I love that we get like, you're entering your autumn, I'm in my spring, and then we get to work with these different energies, and it does seem to always work. So we have a lot to cover today. And I say that, and we also kind of like gave ourselves permission to go wherever we needed to go. But can you share a little bit about how we came to working together? Because our journey starts from like years ago, and you kind of shared a little bit about it. But can you kind of share a little bit about how our paths ended up coming together and where you're at?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that this morning. We were connected many years ago, like
Like,
over 15
yeah, I
years
was
ago.
gonna say like we're getting to probably closer to the 20.
I wasn't going to say 20 because that made me feel old. So I was going to go with like about 15.
We're gonna say that, but like there might have been an extra 5 years in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're glowing. We're good.
Yeah, great skincare.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you studied in Australia, like you said, and through one of your friends in Australia, we were connected because I worked for her parents. So I went and studied abroad in Montreal during my undergrad, and I think that must have been when we first connected properly because you were from there, I was going there. It was a logical connection to make. And then I guess over the years, Facebook and Instagram are amazing vehicles for keeping tabs on people, keeping up, keeping connected. And so over the years, I've followed your work, and there was a point in early 2020. We did not know what that year had ahead for us, but
Yes, that was a big year. Yeah,
January 2020, you were offering a vision board workshop
yeah.
on Zoom, I think. Like, I didn't even know
Yes.
what Zoom was.
Oh my gosh, I was so ahead of the times.
You really were. And I'd
We
always
all know what
been,
Zoom is now.
that's true. Yeah. Oh, all too well.
Yeah.
Um, that you were offering this workshop, and I was very fulfilled professionally in my life. I'd done some really cool things. I worked as a speech language pathologist in Australia. I'd moved to New York City. I was working in a fabulous school. I had amazing students and families and co-workers, and I had a really exciting life in New York City, but something was missing for me. I was very far from family, and I really wanted to have a partner. And I just felt like that never quite came my way in the way that I wanted or needed.
Mm.
Um, and so there was always a little bit of, I guess, shame around or
Mm.
embarrassment about not having met someone yet when all my friends seem to have met their person and, started building lives with other people. So I kind of felt a bit stuck, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, and so I dipped my toe in the coaching world with you then and took your vision board workshop, which was amazing. And I think I'm very creative. So I love anything with images and pictures, and it resonated with my creative side. So I enjoyed, yeah, imagining what my future might look like and finding images or words to represent that and
Mm.
I guess move towards that. And one thing you did in that workshop that really stuck with, yeah,
Like, what was it?
what else? You did a grounding meditation,
Hmm.
and you had us imagine, honestly, I can't remember exactly how you worded it or what the context was, but whatever you said, what came up for me was this image of myself in a home, and I was standing behind like a kitchen bench, and I was looking out at a view. Maybe it was a city skyline, or maybe it was a backyard, I'm not sure. And I had a partner next to me, and my head was on their shoulder, and we had glasses of wine in our
I'm like tearing up right now.
hands. Oh, you
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
okay? Yeah. And then after that meditation, you asked us to open our eyes and sketch out and draw what came up.
Hmm.
I'll have to see if I still have the drawing somewhere. So I just kind of sketched that out. And, you know, put that away. That happened. We did the workshop, COVID. I didn't think anything more of it.
Mhm.
I'd made my vision board, and that was stuck up on the wall in my little tiny New York City apartment. And, I'd look at it, and there was a picture of an Irish passport because I wanted to get my Irish citizenship. So, like, there were things that were on there that I was like, yeah, I could probably work towards that. Certain things felt very attainable, like getting Irish citizenship. There are very clear steps you follow. There are roadblocks, but there are criteria and steps. Moving back to Australia, there are steps I could do to make that happen. But the relationship bit was like still kind of a bit vague and blurry, I guess, for me.
Mm.
So I moved back to Australia after living in the US for 6 years and came home. I was working in a private practice and was happy to be home. But again, I was, mid 30s and feeling like I still really want to meet my person.
Mm.
And that was when I was like, you know what? Put your pride aside. It's okay to work with someone on this.
Mhm.
And that's when I reached out to you to start our coaching together one on one.
I'll never forget that you had commented on one of my posts, and I was like, "Erin, yes, like let's talk." And
Yeah.
I mean, I got teary eyed because as you were sharing, I mean, a lot of people say that the visualizations I've guided them through have had such an impact, and like it deeply moves me because I'm like, I don't even know where this comes from. Like I've been doing this for a long time, but we even before recording here, and I always say this before I record a solo episode or with anyone, I do a little bit of a grounding visualization and welcoming this divine guidance. And I feel there's something I've kind of surrendered to because sometimes I just, even when I lead groups, like we're going to do this grounding. And whether it was that vision board workshop or one of my programs, I have an intention, but then I let it happen.
Mm.
And sometimes I'm like, what's happening? Like I have to just kind of be present to it. So, and knowing where you're at now, like that's why I was so moved. because
Yeah.
you live in a very like you seem to have a life that's very similar to what you just were describing.
Yeah.
And it came from you taking those steps also. And by the way, you are very creative. You have such a creative spirit, and I love that part of you. Um, and when we started that work together, because I had just separated. So when we did that vision board workshop, I was pregnant and I was in this like glowy phase where I was like, I'm living my best life. I'm with my partner. I'm about to be a mom. And it was definitely a very amazing time in my life. And then a couple of years later, it was like, oh, okay, what I didn't expect to happen happened. And I left that relationship. And I was like, you know what? Relationship coaching was a big part in what helped me call in my daughter's father. And then we started working on that front. And I remember, I think it was like probably one of our first or even our second conversation, you like hinted at the possibility of a career shift. Do you
Mm.
remember that?
Yeah. Yes. I think I was quite, I'd always wanted to do my own thing. Like, as a speech language pathologist, I've worked in school settings, mostly school settings in Australia, in New York. And then when I came home, I was in a private practice, mostly in schools, but also in a private clinic. And, my mom had always sort of said, maybe one day you'll have your own business. And it felt like way too big of uh, a thing to do when I had just uprooted my life from the other side of the world during a pandemic, everything that came with trying to come home. It was a very hard time. And there were a lot of things I was going through emotionally that many people aren't aware of with a family member who was quite unwell. So there were a lot of changes already happening. And I felt like I just need to keep something the same for now. Like, I'm not ready for the create a business yet. But sometimes maybe I didn't know it. Maybe I didn't actually want it. Maybe my mum just like planted the seed and I was like, oh, maybe I wouldn't have thought of it if she hadn't have planted the seed, honestly.
And I think that's what you just alluded to there as well, is like the timing of things being so important. And I think sometimes people feel like I should want to act on the seed right away, but sometimes we plant a seed and it takes some time. And that's okay. And honoring the timing of things, like you said, like uprooting your life from New York back to Australia during a global pandemic, like wanting a certain amount of stability was probably a good call. Because, like,
Pretty reasonable.
you know, and how long had you been in New York for? How long had you been away?
It was 5.5 years, but I'm rounding up to 6, especially because of the pandemic. And New York is like a tough place.
New
So
York, I
let's
think
say
it's like
6.
20 years, let's be real. And can you, for someone who's not familiar with, like, they've probably heard the term speech language pathologist, but can you explain what that actually looks like kind of on a day-to-day basis, at least from, your point, like what you do?
Yeah, it can look so different for every person that's working in the profession. And every person that accesses a speech language pathologist would tell you that we do a different thing.
Yeah.
Basically, we cover, I mean, I simplify it by showing, like, from the top of the head to the bottom of the neck. That's like our domain.
Okay.
If it's to do with talking, thinking, swallowing, um, communicating, being with other people, learning, that
Mhm.
falls under our purview. So, working in schools, I've worked with students across all age ranges in areas like language, so comprehension, expressing themselves, understanding what's happening in the classroom, literacy, being able to read and write, play, being able to generate ideas, play with other people, social skills, navigating friendships or misunderstandings, miscommunications. Stuttering is another area. And my particular favorite area is executive functioning, which kind of bleeds into other professions too. I know a lot of psychologists might talk about it, and occupational therapists might also support people in that area. But executive functioning is our ability to be aware of our surroundings here and now and plan and execute things in the future, basically, using skills like attention, working memory, organization, time management. So it's interesting to reflect on how the area I'm moving into really aligns with kind of the work that we've done together.
Hmm.
There are a lot of similarities, I think, in the skills I'm supporting students with and the ones I'm I guess, using myself to create this life.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned students. You work mostly with a younger student population, but
I work across all age levels. So right now, for example, I have students. I have in Australia we call it kindergarten, but it's preschool. So I have preschool through high school.
so it's such a huge range, particularly when you're saying like, okay, especially from like, top of the head to the bottom of the neck. I'm like, there's so much that's going on in that area. I mean, throughout our lifetime, but I feel, from a 4 or 5 year old to 16, 17-year-old, it's massive shift.
Hmm.
What would you say in terms of like your specialty around executive functioning is kind of a through line that you see in terms of either where you need to support students with or something that you see consistently in that age group or that not that age range rather?
I've been reflecting on this a lot recently because I've been doing some presentations to parents and teachers and teacher assistants, as well as consultation directly with schools around executive functioning. And I was reflecting on how I got interested in it. And I
Mhm.
was reminded of some of my students at my school in New York City. I worked with them year upon year. So I supported them as they grew. And so when they were in their early years at school, maybe our focus was on language, developing literacy and play skills, social skills. And
Mm,
as they got older, I noticed that our conversation started to be more about executive functioning. Like that phrase came up
mm,
specifically. And as I'm learning about executive functioning, I'm realizing, well, it was there the whole time. It's
mm,
just, and it was developing the whole time. But when they got to this older age group, the demands of school increased. And so the executive functioning weaknesses started to show.
mm.
Yeah. So I guess I'm noticing it's always there. And it's not something that kids will, like when kids are learning to read, hopefully they have learned the skill of reading by sort of the end of third grade. So they can then switch to fourth grade onwards, reading to learn.
Mm.
So that is something that, theoretically they sort of reach a point where they've acquired that skill. But executive functioning isn't fully acquired until the brain is finished developing in early adulthood. So it's very interesting to think about supporting students across an age range
Mhm.
when they're not expected to have fully acquired this thing until later, but it's still impacting how they go about their day,
Mm.
and the rate they're developing it might need some support.
Wow. And what would you say? Because, I think a lot of the people listening might be on their way to becoming parents or might be parents. And yes, you're working with students, but obviously by default, you're attached to the parents. What would be the main like pieces of advice you would give to parents around this topic of executive functioning? Like what are the things that you're like, I wish parents like got this or knew this? Even if like
Yeah.
speech language pathology isn't on their mind, I know you're very
Mm.
highly sought after, but what's something that you're would be kind of a message you would want parents to hear?
I guess just that any behavior is communication,
Mm,
so parents will see their child do something. They may do the thing they wanted them to do. They may do something different. They may push back. They may withdraw. Whatever you see, a child's response or a child's behavior is telling us something. And maybe it's telling us that they understood. And so they went and did what they were asked to do. Or maybe it tells us they didn't quite understand. Or maybe it tells us that their mind was somewhere else at that moment. So I guess, like, for parents, maybe to be gentle on themselves, that they're not bad parents if their child isn't doing something they asked them to do. Maybe there's a reason for it that could be executive functioning. Maybe that they, weren't paying attention, not because they didn't want to, but because it's hard.
mhm.
Maybe they couldn't remember all of the instructions you gave them because their working memory can only hold so much and they did the bits they could. So I think giving kids the benefit of the doubt as a first kind of response kids will do well. They want to do well. So they will do well if they can. And if they're struggling, then that's telling us something. So maybe we might need to put in some strategies to support that.
I mean, I love that because I think it can be so triggering when a behavior isn't the one we want expressed. And even us as adults, I mean, like you say, there's some parallels between the work you do and the work that we do together. I'm often looking like, and even my clients are often aware of a behavior they're doing. And they're like, this isn't like, why am I doing this thing that I know isn't necessarily aligned with what I say I want? But like you say, it's communicating something that it's almost like this iceberg. It's like the behavior is like the tip. And then we have to do our work at understanding what's underneath. And I feel with child development, from my understanding, it's just, I mean, there's just so much that goes underneath it. And like we sometimes expect them to function at a level that is just way beyond their cognitive functioning or just their emotional development. And I know I've had my moments where I get frustrated. I'm like, can you just like go the fuck to sleep or whatever it is? I've
There's a
had
great
those
book about
moments.
that, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Great title. But even recently with Alicia, there was something she can get really upset when she wants a change. This is the example. We're driving to school. We always have her like music. We have like a dance party before school, but then dance party in the car. And instead of asking like, "Hey, mommy, can you change the song?" She'd like start kicking the back of the seat and be like, "Ah," like. And I was just having one of those moments where I was like, "Stop kicking in the back of the car." And I was like, "Okay." And I just was like, "Okay, Alicia, like you can say, this is what you can say next time." And I would pretend to be her voice. Like, "Mommy, can you
Mm,
change the song, please?"
mm,
And I did that a few times. She was annoyed that I was doing that. But just this morning, she woke up and like the way she asked me for her French toast, I was like, "Thank you so much for asking me like that." And it was like, a few days since we've had that conversation and seeds planted over and over again
mm,
that I was like, she's getting it, even if she doesn't get it in the moment. And I feel what you're saying, like giving kids the benefit of the doubt, giving them time to process and repetition and giving them grace, giving yourself grace. There's definitely moments
mhm.
where it's like, oh, I wish I could just delete, undo,
Yeah.
cut, whatever. But anyway, so what you're saying, I feel like I really resonate with that. And I think as a parent, you know, offering myself grace, but then cultivating patience and curiosity and having a professional like you to lean on to educate myself instead of being like, I can't expect my child to react as I do. And let's be real, us adults can act like children a lot of the time, but we don't have a parent to call us out anymore.
Mm.
So circling to that, is there a skill that you would recommend parents develop to be able to support their children in their journey of cognitive functioning?
What's sort of coming up for me when you were describing your example with Alicia in the car is just how much emotion there is around interaction
Mm,
between parents and kids. And kids are very good at picking up on the language we use, and they're very good at picking up on the tone, the nonverbals that we use,
mm,
tone of voice, gesture. Some kids are really good at sniffing out an emotion a mile away. Like they can tell, like if you're cranky, or you might think you're giving them a direction in a very polite, kind way, but they're like, "That is a demand they are putting on me, and I
oh yeah.
like it." So you've got the language that you explicitly say, and then you've got the nonverbal stuff that is also giving a very potentially clear message to the child, which may not have been your intention. So it
Hmm.
kind of comes back to, put your safety mask on first before you help others. I guess, yeah, checking in with how you're feeling in that moment can be really helpful and powerful to then stop and shift how you respond. Because if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and frustrated, you might respond from that place.
Absolutely.
If you take a moment to sort of pause and go, hang on, it's easy for me to say this because I'm not a parent yet, but from my interactions with children and seeing how they respond to different communication styles, if you're able to pause and maybe even say to yourself, like, are they being a dick right now? Or is it their executive functioning,
Yeah.
maybe needing some support? Or
Yeah.
maybe was my tone a bit harsh? Were my words not clear? Like
Mm,
maybe sort of reflecting and then trying something different. because doing it the same way might get the same response.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like trying to like see it under the iceberg, like you said.
And it can, it's so simple in like on surface level wise, but I feel one of the key things you're saying there is like if you pause, you can respond differently versus react. I feel when, if I'm triggered or overwhelmed or tired or thinking about something else, I'm not responding as much as I'm either imposing or reacting. And a big part has been like giving myself that space to pause and modeling that also for Alicia.
Mm.
And that's something there's been moments because she'll be like, "You're mad, mommy." And I'm like, "No, I'm not."
I'm not mad.
And then I'm like, "Okay, yes, this is what's coming up for me." We have a very open communication style, even though she's young. But one of the things that I was like, I need to call out when I need a moment, because there's been moments for sure. And sometimes it's just part of my parenting journey. And I think every parent has a certain amount, but has been like, okay, for me, what helps me pause is like breath or
Mm.
stepping away and like giving myself space to do that. And Elisa does that herself now. Like not always, or there's been times she's like, "Mommy, you should breathe right now." And then I'm like, "Yes, you're right." And then, I feel that's something that we often want something happening right now. But when we give ourselves just a little bit more space, even if it's just for ourselves to be like, what do I
Mm.
need? And we've talked a lot about needs in our work.
Mhm.
Like, what do I need in this moment? Because a trigger might not even be the about the actual situation, but what it's bringing up inside of us and unhandled emotions or whatnot. And our children can express a lot of big emotions. And I feel tuning into like, what do I need right now to be safe in my body or to be able to hold this? It takes a moment of like alert to do that. But I feel we benefit, but our children do too. That it's like you can also slow down. And that's not, it's easier said than done at times.
Mm.
But I mean, we're also processing our own evolution and all of that. But I think it's really powerful the work that you do because it's so important. Communication and relationship building and understanding one another because everyone's so different. There's a uniqueness with so many differences and nuances that I'm assuming you must see in your students.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And while you were chatting, brought up for me self-regulation is an executive functioning skill, and
Mm,
our children are developing that. But in order to develop that, they need us to co-regulate with them. So thinking back to that stressed parent, that frustrated parent, that overwhelmed parent, it's going to be challenging to co-regulate a dysregulated child if they themselves haven't soothed or taken care of themselves.
yeah. Yes. Oh man. Our kids are such our mirrors. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, when we started our work, we were kind of in the relationship focus. And the seed
Hmm.
was planted around the business possibility.
Mm.
What would you say was like the moment where you were like, let's go there?
Well, you know what? Even a step before that, like I did reach out to you about coaching, but then part of me was like, I don't know, like it could be expensive. So there was, I guess, I probably had some hesitation before like signing on the dot, you know?
Hmm.
Um, Now it just makes obvious sense that, you know, you're part of my team of professionals that work with me and support me. So financially, I don't have those same considerations as maybe I did at the very beginning because, it felt like a big commitment when I'd never done it before.
Right.
Now I absolutely see the value and I recommend you to everybody. Um, but yeah, at the time that was something I kind of needed to like a little hill. I just not a, it wasn't a mountain, it was just a little hill I had to get over
Hmm.
um, to be in. And I think once I'd committed to being in financially, emotionally, intellectually with the work, I, I just feel like everything has gone up from there.
Hmm. And what do you feel helped you go over that hill? Was there a moment or was it a process or what was
I
it?
think it was my trust in you.
Mm.
honestly. Like I knew of you. I didn't know you as well as I know you now, but I knew of you and I knew enough about you that I trusted you and you felt like a safe person to be really vulnerable with because the work is hard. They don't call it the work for nothing.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
yeah, sometimes we had to go places that clearly I needed to go, but I had been pushing way out of view for a very long time. But if we didn't go there, then it wouldn't have cleared the space and the energy and the path for the direction that I've gone in.
Wow. And that's, I mean, I feel a lot of people could relate to that because stepping into a coaching relationship is a really like big deal. Like I'm like there's such an intimate relationship you develop with your coach even if you have multiple coaches in your lifetime. Like I know for me when I'm on the other side, I know every investment it's like deep breaths, and it's like the reason why I say I can't is the reason why I should is often what's having me take that step because I'm like it's my ego in the way and you got to evaluate make sure it's the right fit and all that and like I totally believe in that. But I think that the relationship we've developed, but also with my other clients, it's just there's like you go places that you're like, I'm like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that. I'm often like taking a shower or changing after a coaching session because I'm like, I'm sweating, with you, or whatever's going on. Um, and that again, like I think that comes with the welcoming of the divine guidance. But I appreciate you saying like that safety and that trust because that is something I absolutely want to create for people because I know how vulnerable it is. And I also know that that's where the magic is. Those moments where it's like, it could be like a 30-second moment in a session or even within a 3-month long experience that changes everything or that is the catalyst for everything because we were willing. And that's not that I'm just a little part in that. You've always been willing to go there. And I really want to acknowledge you for that. Because there's been moments where you're like, I'm comfortable. And I saw, you were getting a little redder that, like I could see that you're like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to talk about this. But you
Well,
were always open to.
it's interesting too, reflecting just now about previously I would follow through on things. I was very like a go-getter and a doer, and it was always things that were just reliant on me. Like I can go move to that country, I can go get that Irish citizenship. And now I'm reflecting on it actually like, yeah, we started and it was relationship coaching, but then it morphed into my comfort zone of changing career. But at the same time, you kept bringing me back to that place that I really needed to go. Both, I needed both.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking now how interesting it is that I hadn't planned on starting a business when we worked together, but it makes sense given like my go-getting personality.
Yeah.
But you always brought me back to the reason why I wanted to be there with you in the first place.
Hmm.
Never lose sight of that.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, it's true. We always have like that through line of like, how is this going to support your vision, even if it's ever evolving? And you've also been willing, because I feel there's a combination of like the energetic work where it's like opening up yourself to what's possible. But then there's the actual like to-do list work of like, I need to meet with this person, talk to this person, get this thing done by 2 p.m. at 5, like on Friday or whatever. And you have such a great balance of that. And you've also, I feel, we can maybe talk about this a little bit, your aura photos, but like
Oh
your
yeah.
energy has really, I feel, just expanded in the last few years. Like I said at the beginning, like you are such a beautiful sun to orbit around because you really are a light in this world. And I feel a big part of it is, and I feel you getting all the more attuned to what you want, what you need, owning it, and like walking that path, even and especially when it's uncomfortable. And so I'm curious, what comes up for you when you kind of think about that aspect?
I think I've been getting more attuned to what I want and what I need, but also who I am.
Hmm.
I think that's a big part of it too. Who am I presently? Who have I been before? What makes me me? And
Hmm.
I realized in our initial coaching work together just how miserable I was at the time. I'm a pretty positive person. Um,
Yeah.
but I had, yeah, I guess a lot of dissatisfaction in the job that I was in. I was miserable. And I didn't realize how miserable I was, I guess, until we you know, dug down into it.
Yeah.
And I realized I can't bring someone into my life if I'm unhappy. So I need to go and make myself happy
Mm,
and live a life that I am happy alone or with somebody. Um, and then if I'm living that life that I am enjoying, then maybe someone will come into that.
mm,
But yeah, I guess being in tune with what you want, what you need, who you are, but then how you feel. I think that's a really big key that I've learned from you, is to sit with the feeling of something. And that, I think, has guided a lot of my decision making and paths that I've chosen to take.
mm.
I think the gut is an amazing thing. Like, your gut has a good sense. And
Yeah.
so we need to listen to it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I was with a client earlier today and just like, there's so much of what you say, like I know this stuff, but she's like, the fact that we're taking the time and you're guiding me to work through this thinking process or analysis of my life. And I feel a big part of the coaching work. And I often say this, I'm like, yes, it's an investment financially, but it's an investment energetically and of your time. And I think Oprah says this on her podcast, is like the greatest gift you can give yourself is time, but taking the time to take the time, to like reflect and to, like you were saying, I was kind of miserable in my job. But if you don't pause and reflect on like who you are, who you want to be, what you really want, what you need, you can stay in a very good life, but it might not be your true life or the life that really is meant for you. And you can't blame someone for that because it's not in everybody's path to shift from that. And that's okay. But I feel once you start connecting to that inner wisdom and those gut instincts and start paying attention, but you have to like at first really slow down. I feel it's very innate, but if you've been disconnected from your gut instincts for a long time, you really need to carve out a space to start paying attention to, oh, when does this show up? In the little moments of my day, whether it's like, do I want a second cup of coffee or do I want to take,
Yes,
do I want to go of course.
always, Mel.
Or do I want to go on a second date with this person? Like your gut will have typically a sensation that it awakens to guide you forward. So I feel you're very strong in that, and I feel that's also because you're doing the work. And
Mm.
it's not always easy to listen to what the gut says because sometimes you're like, I didn't want you to say that. I thought we were going left. Um,
Please be quiet, gut. I'm not listening to you right now.
So with that, what would you say, I guess there's been these two core paths in our work together, the relationship work and then the business work. What would you say has been your key learnings from the work that we've done that has brought you to where you are today?
I think that my gut or intuition or feeling about things is often, I'm not going to say what's right, but it's what's right for me at that time.
Mhm.
And it just makes sense. I think once I start to have a thought, a feeling, a vision about what my future could look like, and I start sort of, this is the executive functioning going on. Once I start imagining that future and kind of playing with it in my mind, it makes sense. So then I move towards that. And
Mm.
it's funny mentioning earlier about the grounding meditation and having that kitchen looking out. When I first came back to Melbourne and I was looking for a place to live, I visited a few different apartments. And when I walked into this apartment that I'm in now, oh, I just got chills. It just felt like right. So it felt familiar to me. I'd never been in it before. The photos online didn't tell me I was going to have this feeling, but I came in and I was standing behind the kitchen. My friend calls it a peninsula because it's attached to the wall. It's not an island, it's a peninsula.
Okay.
Um, But I stood behind and I looked out, and I've got these big windows, looks out onto the city, and it felt right.
Wow.
And that was a year and a half after we'd done that vision board workshop.
Hmm.
So sometimes seeds get planted and it kind of is just, it's still sitting away in there in the background. And then when something happens, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
You may not connect originally to like that original moment and why it makes sense for you, but when things just make sense, maybe it's been percolating for a while.
I find that so fascinating because there's been many moments in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, I envisioned that and it manifested in a way like either quite literally or I understand why I had to pursue a certain vision to then receive something else. And there's also been moments where I've had visions and then it's been completely different. But there's an episode I recorded on how to go from like vision to reality and just the power and I talk about the tool of the vision board because there's so many different ways to work with your vision, whether it's visioning or ground guided visualizations. I do feel there's such a power in images and really connecting to them. And I have an album on my photos that's like vision to reality because there's been many moments in my lifetime where I'm like, wait a second, I'm exactly where I had taken a photo of. And when that started happening without me noticing, that's when I started noticing it more.
Mm.
Because I would show up in places, particularly around travel, because that was often like a particularly in my big visions of my 20s was like, I want to go here and here. But even like the house I live in now, I don't have this image of a vision board I had, but I think about an apartment I lived in Montreal. I had this little vision board. And I would talk, I had like little words that said, like, I'm going to do smiling meditation. And I had a photo of a house that looks very much like this one. Like I have a wraparound porch, it's like a navy blue house. And I remember when we found this house, I thought about that vision board and that photo because I was like, this looks so much like that house back then.
Mm.
And I find that really interesting, like just how we often know more than we give ourselves credit for, like what we're interested in, what we're called to. And then those seeds we plant, like I said, it can take a bit of time, but like a year and a half later, you walk into that apartment and the chills, that feeling,
Yeah.
your body will talk to you.
I wasn't looking for that particular vision that I'd had or that image that I was looking like that I wanted to have.
Mm,
But when it appeared, it felt right. And I think in terms of the business that I run now, clients reach out, they maybe are interested in services. I'm noticing that I get a sense, which I'm learning as I go. It's probably now 3 years. This
yeah,
is
I
our
think you're
third
in your
year of
third year.
business. Yeah, I should know that.
I'm losing track. Well, me too. I'm like, time
Yes,
is flying,
no.
but I'm like, I feel you're such a seasoned entrepreneur now. You're just rocking it.
I was born this way. No.
Yeah, like you're so
Uh,
amazing.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I'm noticing now the patterns I get and the feelings I get when someone reaches out. I kind of get a sense. It's that saying like when people show you who they are, believe them. It's
Mm.
true because sometimes someone will reach out and I'll be like, I don't know if this vibe sits with me.
Mhm.
But maybe I have space in my calendar and I'm like, I suppose I could make it work. And then you might respond to them and then never hear anything. And then you go, oh yeah, I kind of have a feeling that wouldn't play out.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Um,
really good at that. Like, it's like the synchronicities that you've created in your life, but also your gut feelings. And I
mm,
love because we exchange on the Marco Polo app, which is something I love doing with my clients. Like, you'll give me an update about what's going on, maybe a challenge you're working through, and then the next one is like you being like, I owned myself and like just, I said no and like protected my peace and like just rock and like you're consistent in tuning in and paying attention to me like this is what I'm noticing. You might ask for some
mm,
feedback, but then you're good at checking in to be like, does this feel right? Whether it's the amount of people you're presenting to or like a new policy you need to integrate. So you're really good
mm,
at balancing the very practical realm of running your business, but also honoring the emotional, like how does it feel? Because some things can often make sense on paper, but they don't necessarily make sense with your energy or what you're going through. And I feel you're doing a good job at moving through that. Of course, there's adaptation because you're doing all of this for the first time and building it. But I really admire the way you're able to have those two work, which is a very,
Mm,
to generalize it, like a very feminine and masculine energy working well together. And I think in business, you need both. You need the
mm,
masculine to like hold the structure. And when I say masculine, as women, we have both masculine and feminine energies. It's really just a way to generalize certain types of energies. But like you've created a good structure, but then you're also for your feminine to flow. And I feel it
mm.
shows because I feel the work you do also requires that you be in a like nurturing and like energy, but then also hold about like boundaries.
And that's what I'm trying to get better at. And I think I am getting better at that, is going with what feels right and what feels needed for me and the business I'm creating, and balancing that with the expectations and pressures and desires of other people. You know, you can't please everybody. You have to say no. I don't like confrontation. So, there are some difficult communications sometimes I have to have as a business owner. But if I come back to, well, what feels right? Well, the decision I'm making feels right. So maybe I do have to have that awkward conversation to stick with what is right for me, because I don't want to end up doing things that are not right for me and feel out of control. That's not why I started my own business. But
Mm,
I would also say being able to do all of this comes from a huge place of privilege.
mm,
I had very fortunately worked for many years before I started my business, and I was able to financially support myself for a period of time when I didn't know what money was going to come in. That's a big jump when you start a business. All of a sudden, your salary drops off and you don't know when you're going to get paid next,
yeah.
especially in a client service industry like speech language pathology, where you don't see a client, you don't get paid. So I'm mindful that I was very privileged to have a little, buffer, I suppose, to allow me to take the work that sits right for me, not take work because I have to.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful that you brought that up. Um, and I think I was actually speaking to someone who's considering starting his own business. He's like, maybe I'll just take out a loan. And we might just say that in passing, but what a privilege it is. And I was talking to one of my clients. I helped her shift from the corporate world to starting her business. And one of the tools I had given her, I was like, ask for money when you don't need it. And I'm like, you've been in the corporate world for 10 years. Banks are probably going to want to give you money because they don't know yet that you want to do a startup. And like being able to access funds, whether from your savings or from loans is a privilege. I mean, you have to be responsible and mindful of these things, but I'm like, a lot of people aren't in those positions to make those moves. And some people start things with nothing, but a lot of people need a certain cushion to be able to make that leap from, steady income to building something, because things can happen quickly, but when you're starting it, it doesn't feel that fast. Like we are looking at
Yeah.
it now, like a few years, like in the rear mirror, but like the experience of time is very different when you're starting things out, and there's so much newness, there's so much of like building, and it's so much energy and uncertainty and excitement. You
Mm-hmm.
also have to be strong enough to handle that, and having that cushion is really great whether it's in financial terms but also relationship terms, having people that can support you to do that, and then honor your journey and whatever that is. But I do think you're like, it's really important that you bring that up, because sometimes people feel like they overlook that step in a way of seeing like, hey, it's great that you can go take out a loan to start a business and try something out, that if you're at that point in your life that you can, and that you'll still be okay, even if though you feel like you're going to die, you're not. Like you'll always have a roof over your head pretty much, like because that's the bloodline you were born in, or the privilege you were born in. Then you have to take responsibility for that and make that legacy proud, I feel. And you're doing
And I
it
was
for
in a
you.
and I was in a position where, if, let's give this a go, let's try starting this business. And if it doesn't work out, I can just go and get another job. Speech language pathology is in such high demand in Australia and all over the world. Thankfully, I'm going to be fine. But I
Yeah.
guess keeping in mind kind of the double side of our work together, that I was creating this business while also still hoping to bring someone in. And so part of creating the business has been, what kind of work fulfills me? What do I enjoy doing? What is also like my passion and purpose? What am I really good at that people benefit from? And that's where the passion lies. So let's shift in that direction.
Mm.
And then how can I set up a business in a way that will allow me to have this work-life balance that I want, that includes sharing a life with someone, traveling together or separately, and yeah, creating something that I just love and enjoy. And so, yeah, decisions have been made with kind of both factors in mind, I think.
And I think, I mean, that I'm kind of a stickler on that when I'm working with someone, that it's like, okay, we might be working just specifically on your career or your relationship, but everything touch affects everything else. And I know I'm always thinking about that when I'm working with someone, because if you're just focusing on one area, every other area will be affected, but we're trying to keep in mind like what you want to be, like what you want to create in those areas, not just like everything will be affected, but let's affect them positively. Because some people might be so career driven that they overlook their relationship, for example. It's actually a very common example. But when we think about them both, then it can, it, some people might think it adds a layer of complexity, but I feel it adds a layer of alignment of being like, oh, this, if I'm committed to having a full life and step into the believing that it's possible, then I make different decisions, which you are a reflection of making decisions that take that into consideration. And I think then that's where there's a bit more joy and flow in our
Yeah.
lives, because why not have a full life? Like, we didn't work this hard, and our mothers and grandmothers didn't work this hard for us to not, and we need to keep that flame going. So I'm curious, because I feel there's so much we can continue talking into, but if we kind of start wrapping a bow around this, what would you say to the version of you, you know, that was just leaving New York, arriving in Melbourne, like at the heart of the pandemic? A woman who might be in that similar position, minus the pandemic now, thank goodness. Um, what's something you're like, oh man, I wish my younger self knew this? What advice would you give?
I think I wish my younger self knew to feel more in the moment
Mm,
and to be aware of how I was feeling in moments, to be able to align that with what my visions were for what I wanted my life to look like and feel like. So if I wanted to bring in a partner, if I want to start a business, what does that look like? But I want to feel what that feels like. How do I want to feel in the future? And then how am I feeling in the present to notice if that is in alignment? So
mm.
there's a lovely positive outcome to the story of our work together. That yes, I've created a business and I've brought this wonderful person into my life. I actually met my partner 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and we went on a couple of dates. And then I was like, he's great. He like ticks all the boxes. He's a wonderful person. But I wasn't connected with my feelings in that moment, of the feelings I was looking for and the feelings that I got when I was with him. I was not synced up with that. So I
Mm.
didn't realize that he was actually my person that whole time.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until you and I did work together that I reflected and I was like, oh, that guy. Yeah, I did feel really comfortable when I was with him. It did feel safe. It
Mm.
did feel easy and light. Huh. And then I saw him on the street and was like, oh, there's that guy. And still
I
had his number, so I
remember
texted
that.
him. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so interesting. And what would you say? Because someone, I think you kind of touch on a trifecta of like, feel your feelings, get clear on your vision, and what's that going to look and feel like in your day to day. Is there something you do to help you connect to your feelings now? Like a practice, or like how have you cultivated that?
that is a great question. I don't consciously do anything specific. Like I don't do meditations or journaling or um, maybe I've just always been a little bit in tune with, well, I've always been in tune with other people's emotions.
Mm,
Maybe I'm now having done the work, more in tune with my own.
Wow.
I can't say it's a specific practice that I do, but maybe it's the work that I've done.
But I feel what you just shared there is so relatable, specifically, I think, for a lot of women that are often very much attuned to others. And I think that can be a very innate thing, not maybe not for everyone, but for a lot of women to be more about what others are thinking and feeling, often because it might be a relation related to us feeling safe. But when you reflect back, because a lot of people will, of women I work with, will know more what other people want than what they want, you know? Like you might see them at a restaurant, they're like, this is what my husband would want to order, this is what my kids want to order, but then they're like, should I have the chicken? Or I don't know. But what you're I know I'm like making this comical, but um what you just shared there is like I've always been in tune with other people's emotions, but now it's like you also created space to like validate your emotions and tune into those instead of doing as if they weren't important. That's kind of what
Mm.
I'm present to.
And I think also having a partner who meets all of the needs that I was looking for in someone, I've learned so much about myself since we've been together. And I'm now discovering these other parts of myself that I didn't know I could be. Like, I feel like I'm a better version of myself because he gives me the safety and the comfort and the security to just be me. Like, and so I'm learning more about who I am by being with him and appreciating the wonderful person he is too. Yeah. So it's exciting.
That is so exciting. I love love. I love love.
Oh, we love love. Yeah.
And I remember, I feel that work we did around needs was so crucial. And so for anyone listening, I feel like really paying attention to like, what do I need in this moment? You know, do I need a glass of water? Like go as simple, but then it can go deeper. Like, do I need safety? Do I need connection? Do I need exploration? And I feel when you connect more deeply to your needs, it's then easier to also be present to what your partner needs or partner that you're calling in, and then those needs then become more naturally fulfilled because you're just bringing the awareness to them, like when you're where your attention goes, energy flows. So it's like, oh, I need this. So the universe is like, yes, you do. Thank goodness you noticed it. And now we're going to start showing you what that looks like. But I remember how potent that felt and how you've continued to stay true to that. And it's just so beautiful to see what you've created. So I'm like, again, I said, it's been such a joy to work with you. And I'm so honored to be part of your team and to see what you're going to continue to create. And I really am so appreciative of what you were able to share with everyone today. If you had like one last thing that you would want people listening to, particularly since most of the audience is women, and maybe women who are maybe at a crossroads personally or professionally, or just at the space where they might be wondering what's next or trying to figure out how to connect to their intuition, is there like one final message that you're like, oh, girl, this is what I need you to hear?
Just imagine all the possibilities, play into them, see how they feel when you imagine them. There's no risk in playing with these thoughts, right? You can visualize so many different possibilities for yourself. It doesn't cost anything to do that. If you don't like one of the visions that you're creating in your mind, there's no consequence to you in that exact moment in time. So
Yes.
why not play around with all the possibilities and see what feels right and what looks right? But yes, what feels right, and then shift in that direction. Play with it.
Oh, I love that. Yes, play with it. I think that is so key. Like, just have fun with it. You don't have to commit to them until we get there.
And
Um,
decisions might change in the future too. We played with an idea at one point about renting an office space. And at
mhm.
the time, we played with two ideas. Do we rent the office space in 6 months' time? How do I feel? What does it look like? Versus do I not? And in that moment, it felt right to go in the direction of renting the space. Fast forward 12 months, we played with the ideas again, and it felt right to no longer have that space.
Mm,
So just because you play with an idea and move towards it doesn't mean you can't change later on. It's just going with what is right for you at the moment that you need it.
I love it. Erin, thank you so much. And I'll be speaking
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
for
Mel.
tuning in. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you next time. How amazing is Erin White? Isn't she just such a light? As I shared at the beginning of the episode, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this episode, share it with someone that you know. And before we completely wrap up, I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming Matriarch program. In the event that you would like to experience your own form of transformation, as Erin has, in a group setting. So, the Matriarch program is my go-to program for women who want to reclaim their power and really start creating lives that are in alignment with their true nature. And Erin and I have been working together one-on-one over the years. And there are several things that she talked about in our conversation today that you will be able to create for yourself through the Matriarch program. It is truly the foundation of all the work that I do with people in a sacred container where you get to take time to go inward and create a life that you absolutely love. So some of the things that Erin talked about was the power of the vision work, the power of grounding, tuning into her emotional needs, and not only being attuned to others, but now with herself and knowing herself better. We also explored how she focused on core priorities in her life and turned these visions into a reality. These are all possible for you when you're part of the Matriarch program. We weave grounding into every session that we do together. There is a whole section on visioning work and opening yourself up to possibility. I help you channel your focus into a project or goal that is most aligned with your soul, be it calling in your partner or creating your business or both, and then finding a way to take action that bridges the realm of the practical with the spiritual so that you get to balance the different kind of energies in your true being, but also work with the seasons and rhythms and cycles of your life. So if this is something that is of interest to you or that you want to find out more about, then I highly recommend you check out the Matriarch program. The fall 2025 program starts September 30th and registration is now open. It's 10 weeks that we spend together with weekly coaching sessions within the group, as well as the possibility of adding on to premium if you want to have more one-on-one support. If you want to find out more and get a taste of one of the elements that we look at in the Matriarch program, which is the soulful productivity philosophy, I am leading a free training on September 23rd. Everything's going to be linked in the show notes here, so that if you want to get a feel for being in a space with me, but also learn how to reclaim your time in a way that honors your feminine essence this fall, then I highly recommend that you join me live. And in the event that you're watching or listening to this episode after the program has started or after the dates that I've just named here, don't worry. I highly recommend that you join my mailing list. That way you can be notified of any upcoming Matriarch programs or other trainings I might be leading, and also free events that may be coming your way. You'll also get notifications around new released episodes. Lastly, if you would like to explore working one-on-one with me or even going through the Matriarch experience one-on-one as Erin has, Erin and I have been working together one-on-one for many years, then shoot me an email so that we can get started. One of the things that Erin said in this episode that I think is really important to note is that she put her pride aside and acknowledged that what she wanted but wasn't yet experiencing in her life is something that she needed to reach out and be willing to have support for, but also be willing to commit financially, energetically, and time-wise in order to make this happen in her life. There is no shame in getting support. And often the things that we most desire are the things in our lives that we have the most resistance around. It's kind of frustrating, I know. But that is one of the reasons that I love the work that I do. And it is such a privilege because I know that when we work together, whether one-on-one or in a group setting, we are playing for something that is so meaningful to you, and seeing that come to life in the most unique way, in the most aligned way possible, is a true privilege for me. And so if it's hard for you to reach out, I get it. It is so hard for me to reach out for help. And that is why I've paid thousands of dollars over the years for both personal and professional support through coaches and mentors in order for me to create the life that I'm living now and to continue moving past the blocks I put on myself. I mean, we're all human and we're all doing this life for the first time. So again, all the links are here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't wait to share the next episode with you. It's actually going to be all about soulful productivity. So make sure to tune in and check out all the beautiful work that Erin is also up to, also linked in the show notes. And hopefully I'll see you during the live free training on September 23rd, where you get to reclaim your time and in turn reclaim yourself, but also in the matriarch program starting this fall. I can't wait. Have a beautiful day.